Hi, my name is Helen Molesworth, and I'm curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. I'm also one of the organizers of Kerry James Marshall Mastery, a 35-year survey exhibition of this extraordinary American painter's work. Organized in collaboration, we're standing in the first gallery of the Kerry James Marshall exhibition. I think it's really important to know a few things about Marshall's biography because they play a huge role in the extraordinary paintings he would go on to make throughout his adult life. Marshall was born in 1955 in Birmingham, Alabama, which means that he was 8 years old when the KKK bombed the 16th Street Baptist Street Church, killing 4 small black school girls. Birmingham, Alabama was small, and most families who were African American knew of the families or knew the actual girls who were killed. And Kerry James Marshall and his family were no exception. In response to that violence, Kerry James Marshall's parents moved him and his 3 siblings to Los Angeles in search of a better life and more opportunities. They arrived in Los Angeles, they moved into the Watts neighborhood and into the... As we walk into this next gallery of the exhibition, you'll notice a few things right away. One is that the paintings have gotten much larger and much more complex. You'll also notice that they're hung on the wall with grommets and screws. They're not actually real paintings in a way. One of the reasons Marshall did this was because as a young artist, he was painting in a very small studio, and sometimes he didn't even have a studio. He was actually just painting in his home, in his kitchen. Once you put a painting on stretcher bars, they become very large and very hard to move, and all of these paintings would have been larger than the doorway of the house that Kerry was living in. His solution to this problem was not to put the painting on stretchers, and simply to paint with the canvas directly tacked to the wall. This meant that when the painting was over, he could roll up the painting, put it under the bed, or carry it out the front door himself. The other thing you'll notice is how many pictures there are in this gallery of people in love. One of the most important things about Kerry James Marshall's work is that he was really interested in trying to figure out how to make paintings of everyday Black life. One of the most important things to him was to show Black people falling in love and being in normal domestic houses. He was interested in what he called Black normalcy. So not Black people as exceptional or magical or pathological or criminal, but Black people as everyday people, people who meet, who fall in love, who have children. When we enter this gallery, we see a fabulous standoff. On the one hand, a great picture of a barber shop called The Style, and on the other hand, an amazing painting of a beauty parlor called School of Beauty, School of Culture. These 2 paintings form a kind of companion piece, and they exemplify some of the most amazing attributes of Kerry James Marshall's work. School of Beauty, School of Culture, made in 2012, so almost 10 years after De Style, is the companion piece to De Style because it's the beauty parlor. If De Style gave us the classic male's barbershop, School of Beauty gives us the female beauty parlor. De Style was painted in 1993 and is the painting of the barber shop. In it, we see 5 guys looking straight at us. Most of them have incredible haircuts. These guys have it going on. The interior is the barber shop. And I have to say what I think is happening here is Kerry James Marshall is starting to show off a little bit. Not only does he show us every little thing in the barber shop, from the paper towels to the radio to the combs to the little bit of a picture of Muhammad Ali, he also shows us everything in the barber shop reflected in the mirror. In this regard, Kerry James Marshall is not only giving us a kind of glimpse into everyday life, but he's also showing us how much he can do as a painter. The other extraordinary thing in this picture is that if you look closely, you'll see that the barber has a halo. One of the ways I think about the barber having a halo in this picture is that the barber is like the artist. The barber has incredible skills. The barber is someone who makes In the mid-1990s, Kerry James Marshall set out to make a suite of paintings that dealt with the problem of public housing in the United States. It was a really interesting time to take on such a challenge, because during the 1990s, our country was having a fairly in-depth discussion about what to do about public housing. Public housing was seen to be in a state of crisis. Public housing was seen to be a site of drugs, crime, and general disrepair. Marshall was living and working in the south side of Chicago, and from his studio he could see the towers of Cabrini Green. At the time, Cabrini Green was the poster child for everything that was wrong with public housing. However, Marshall had memories of public housing that were really different from the conversation that was being had in the 1990s. As a young boy, his family had moved into the Nickerson Gardens public housing project in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles. He remembered housing that was brand new. He remembered a toy library where children were allowed to check out toys. He remembered a common green space where all the kids were able to play. And he remembered adults planting their gardens, tending to their flowers, and a general sense of well-being, and that public housing was a good thing. It was, in fact, a utopian space, the kind of utopian space that so many people imagined it would be when they started building public housing in the 1930s through the 1960s. In this room, we see Kerry James Marshall absolutely come into his finest as an artist. This room has pictures that we call history painting that really show us the history of our culture. It also has very romantic paintings that show us how we come to understand ideas like love and history. And it also introduces Kerry James Marshall's interest in photography as well as painting. In this painting, we see 2 figures naked, running outside in a savanna, in a field. They're chasing butterflies. They have Afrocentric haircuts. They're surrounded by bluebirds and cardinals, and the sky is blue with just a trace of clouds. They're Adam and Eve in the garden. No apple has yet been eaten. They're in love. They're free. Souvenir 1 is a very, very large painting. It's fitting because it contains some very large ideas. First, we are in a room, and we are in a well-appointed room, a room that someone has prepared with care and love, a room that has a curio cabinet, a room that has a marble table with flowers on it, a room that has one of those old-fashioned big wooden spoons filled with what we know are plastic grapes. This room is the most delicious mint green. This room is a room from the past. This room is like one of those rooms that your great-aunt made or your grandmother lives in. This room has flocked wallpaper and wood paneling. This is an American room. In this room, by now, you may begin to realize that Kerry James Marshall has been working his way through all of the different types of Western painting and inserting Black figures into them. We've seen landscape painting, domestic genre scenes, history painting, and portraiture. Here, we also see the nude and love scenes called fêtes galantes, which were invented in France in the 18th century. One of Marshall's primary activities as an artist has been to ensure that every single type of painting had Black people in it, so that no one could ever say that they didn't exist. It was important for Marshall to basically infiltrate the museum with paintings of Black subjectivity. Kerry James Marshall is known primarily as a painter, but there really isn't any way to be a painter in the late 20th and early 21st century and not deal with photography. The art of hanging pictures is one of Marshall's most interesting and difficult forays into that realm. On this large wall, we see an array of photographs framed and installed. They're framed in lots of different ways and installed in lots of different ways. The pictures themselves are very workaday. None is particularly dramatic. By now, you may begin to realize that Kerry James Marshall has been working his way through all of the different types of Western painting and inserting Black. As we walk into this room, you might be struck by a common color palette that many of these paintings share: red, black, and green. These colors are the colors of the Pan-African flag. The history of the Pan-African flag is that it was a flag meant to symbolize the diversity and strength of the African nations and the African diaspora. Red was meant to symbolize blood and sacrifice, black, the color of the people, the fertility of Africa. Untitled Studio is one of Kerry James Marshall's. This final room of the exhibition brings two very different versions of history together. On the one hand, you have Baobab Ensemble. In the center of the room, what you see are all of Kerry James Marshall's image clippings. He has allowed us to spread them out all over the floor, and so that viewers can pick them up and touch them and look at them. What we see when we look at these pictures is the history of Western culture laid out on the ground. Images of African sculpture, images taken from popular magazines, pictures of famous paintings. This is the collective archive of pictures that we all share. The other version of history in the room are a bunch of paintings that Kerry made up from his own imagination. The history of African American life in this country is a history of omissions and absences. And one of the things that Kerry has done is invent different pictures of historical moments that we don't actually have images of.